Have you ever heard what somebody said, but it really wasn't what they meant? So you have an interpretation of what was said. You hear some generic phrase like, hey, you're close, it looks good, we're certainly considering you. Well, you heard that, but sometimes as salespeople, we have what's called happy ears. So when somebody says, hey, we're really considering it and you're close, here's what happy ears hear. You guys are going to get the business here. It's only a matter of time. Just hang out. And then I'm saying to myself, oh, what am I going to do with my commission check? The fact of the matter is that's not really what they said, or maybe it is, but you don't know. We got to make sure that we start to sort of peel back the onion whenever you have an idea or a definition or maybe a concern about what was said. So be skeptical. So when somebody says, hey, money's no object, you have to say, well, do you mind sharing what that means to you? Or if you have to say, hey, what does that mean? If you're saying that to yourself, then you may need to ask the question out loud. So let's say an investigative reporter says, when somebody says, yeah, I think it was the general area where that happened. What does that mean exactly? What would an investigative reporter say? What area are you talking about, maybe? Or which day, or what time of the day? So you got to ask a lot of questions, and it's okay to make sure you're on the same page. And that's all it is, making sure what you said, I understood, and vice versa. And we don't always do that, right? So how do you do that? Well, the first thing we want to make sure is that we validate what we heard. Say, hey, when you say we're close, what does that mean exactly, Steve? Or because close to that person could be completely different than close to the other person or you. Or what would I have to set as close? So I have this technique called stroke, repeat, reverse. Here's what it sounds like. If somebody says to you, hey, you're really close, I don't want you to have a happy ear. I want you to put that investigative reporter hat on, but I want you to thank them for what they said. Say, hey, you're really close there on price. I really appreciate you telling me that, Mr. Byron. When you say we're really close, what is it exactly that you mean by that? So what did I just do? I thanked them. I repeated what they said to make sure I heard it. And then I said, like a tennis ball, I threw it back into their court. And I said, but what does that mean to you, sir? Now they could say anything. They could say, Steve, it's only a matter of time before we get this through and give you a purchase order. Or they could say, you'll have my okay in a week. Or they could say, hey, you're certainly close on price here and you've got everything we want, but we have your number one competitor coming over today too. So what I didn't hear, I didn't use happy ears. I asked to make sure I understood. So what I'm asking you to do is peel back the onion a little bit. And when you hear wishy-washy words or wishy-washy phrases, like, hey, we're pretty close here. Remember, you can't lose anything you don't have. So it's okay to ask a question. It's okay to ask to validate. You can say something simple to make sure I understand, to make sure I understand. Or could you tell me exactly what you mean by that? You don't have to insert your own definition of what's being said. When we insert our definition, that's when there could be a misunderstanding. Because when you do that, more times than not, you're wrong. So at all costs, avoid this thing we call mutual mystification when you're just not sure.